What's up, guys? Coach Justin with RYU BJJ, and I'm super excited about today's episode here with my good friend, Professor Ehren David. Thank you for being here, brother. I appreciate you. Really looking forward to talking all things BJJ with you and seeing the technique you're going to be showing later. So, if you could start just by giving us a brief preview window into kind of your own jiu-jitsu journey, what brought you to the art and kept you training in it, kind of what that's looked like.
It's a really good question, and I actually came into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu backwards. My initial goal was to go into the military, and this was part of a sort of a preparatory thing, get better in shape, and just in general, it was just a way to kind of get my headspace in that place for going in and going through basic. And then it turns out when you have PTSD already, you're not actually allowed to go in. Apparently, you have to get it while you're there. So I ended up just sticking with jiu-jitsu, kept working and training, and it just sort of grew from there until we got to here.
Got it. Well, and I know because we've known each other for quite a while, and we've talked about various aspects of training over the years. But you've had a journey through a number of different academies, and that's kind of giving you a unique perspective on jiu-jitsu. We both have our black belts under James Foster, so we ended up with the same professor. But you've trained at a number of gyms. How did that process look, and who has been kind of a great positive influence or mentor roles or people you look up to in the jiu-jitsu community as you navigated your journey?
Yeah, I actually get that question a lot once people find out sort of the path I've walked, and a lot of questions as to how did that come about. So I started in Olympia. I was training at BJJ Olympia, and I would train there until blue belt. There was more than a few pretty influential people. A couple of them I can't name because of their jobs. But if they watch this, you know who you are, and I appreciate you. Also, I actually got to work with Jeff Munson more than a few times, but the really memorable one was when we were in the run-up to him going over and fighting Fedor.
Yeah.
Which that fight was, he came back with a broken femur, so you don't go to Russia to win.
Right.
But rolling with him, working with him, gave me a sense of like, this is pressure, this is size. Him, Coach Foster, very few others really can generate that level of, wow, this is a problem. And also, we had a fun time where one last round, might have been the last one before, during his training camp, where then he went off to fight Fedor. Somebody forgot to hit the timer, and so 3-minute round ended up being like a 6-8 minute round. I don't know. It was really long, and his arm was around my head for a good portion of it, trying to twist it around like the Exorcist. So compared to that, when people are like trying to be real aggressive with me, it doesn't really bother me, and so that was kind of a positive experience, because it sort of gave me a sense of like, no, this is actually the deep end of the pool. Though, still, I wouldn't recommend an 8-minute round with Jeff Munson.
Not if you want to relax and kick back.
No, really sweet guy, was really sweet with my daughter, my wife, and really kind to him. So, like, really nice guy. But in a role, no, not so much.
Well, that seems to be a theme that I run into a lot, because jiu-jitsu is full of very good athletes and tough or scary-looking people, as Jeff Monson is definitely a intimidating-looking individual. But they all seem to be like the biggest sweethearts in the whole world, which is a really cool thing. I think that it's a testament to jiu-jitsu filter out the bad apples for the most part. That's been my experience anyway.
It can.
Yeah, it's not 100% for sure. Well, then, I know you trained with Will Haggerty down at Jiu-Jitsu Dynamics for a while, and he's a great guy we had on the channel. Tell me a little bit about that and maybe the transition between gyms.
It's actually something I talk to a lot, especially I talk about a lot when especially when I'm talking with students who are maybe considering changing where they're going to train, or because moving, work, whatever, they're going to have to do it. Because I learned a lot from both times that I changed academies. The first time was when I moved from BJJ Olympia to Jiu-Jitsu Dynamics. And that one it was more happenstance. I decided to take some time away, and then just ran into one of my old training partners a few minutes after talking with the instructor at BJJ Olympia. I ran into a friend and said, "Hey, Will's just opened up his shop," and I just wanted to keep training, and I wanted to also just go and check it out and spend some time. Went to a class; it just fit really well, and I mean, I already knew Will. He was a good guy, so it was a place to be, and then it ended up being a place I spent longer time at, and ended up spending 3 years with Will Haggerty. Great instructor, really technical. I highly recommend grabbing time with him if you can, visiting when there's an open mat, or if he teaches a seminar, definitely take advantage. Got lots of technique, really wicked crucifix. I'm actually really happy that I got to train with him, because that's one of the things that I carry with me to this day. And that's where I got my purple belt, was under Will Haggerty. And then it became apparent that there was something not quite correct, even though I was in a great place and Will was a great instructor. It started to become very clear that he just wasn't the right instructor for me, or more accurately, I wasn't the right student and the right version of me to be there. And it was like the cliche, it's not me, it's you. But it really was, like, in my headspace at that time, it just wasn't the right place for me to be. And partly it happened to be that there was actually another place that had already kind of filled that place. And I just took a while to understand that, recognize it.
And that was Foster's.
Yeah, that was our instructor, James Foster. And the reason why he was the guy, it's not that there aren't, like, a lot of amazing people that have joined me on my path, spent time, crossed my path. It was that at a very critical moment when I was dealing with a damaged knee, and I had all but decided, and probably honestly actually decided, I was done with jiu-jitsu. And I was blue belt, had a very bad knee injury, and was walking around because I was working at the Revolution tournament, and they were really awesome about letting me still work there even though my knee was busted. Jeff Bourgeois, friend of ours, he was really awesome and supportive, even though he knew I was going through a rough time, because I wasn't able to train. And James was there, and he stepped off the rail as I was walking past, and ended up spending like 10, 15, 20 minutes talking to me. And he said later that he didn't, because he saw somebody that was dealing with something that wasn't in a good place, which he was right. And instead of quitting jiu-jitsu, I took his advice, and I waited, worked through it, got my knee healed up, and then that's why I was in the right headspace and still in jiu-jitsu when the opportunity to train with Will happened. But while training with Will, so that friendship and relationship, like that mentor relationship with James Foster, was just something that had already taken root. And so I already had an instructor. I just didn't really realize that James was the guy, that he was the person I was actually looking to, and it wasn't really Will. And when I finally did realize it, when I realized I was getting irritated and frustrated, and why I was just irritated with the training, was when I realized that I was home when I was at Foster's, and I was visiting, felt like I was visiting when I was at Dynamics, and that it was 100% just where my headspace was. And that's when I had the conversation with James. We had a conversation over lunch. He had never once asked me to train there. He had left a door open, but if he nudged me at all, I would have figured it out sooner. But he also knew there was something I had to figure out myself. And so I talked to him about it. He said that he would be happy to have me train under him. I asked him how to do it right this time, because definitely didn't handle it the best way the first time I changed. And this time, talked to the right people in the right order, and some people took it okay, some people didn't, but I did it the right way. I had clear communication. I talked to people beforehand, and then I walked out the front door. And at the very least, nobody should, at least in my opinion, think that there was anything inappropriate, wrong, disrespectful, especially disrespectful towards Will or anybody who trained there. And hopefully, I hope that everybody to this day, that's their take on it. If not, they should probably give me a call.
He's available. Well, yeah, and I think we've also had James on the channel, and he has had a similar experience that he's just been a mentor to me as well as a friend and just a great guy in general. So no doubt that he draws people into his orbit just by virtue of the fact that
he's just a decent dude.
Yeah. Really good guy. And then I know we've talked about other people at Unicorn Studio, specifically Unicorn Jiu-Jitsu.
100%.
Brian and Hillary.
Yep, Hillary and Brian, kind of like with me and not being with James yet, it was before they were a one jiu-jitsu school, and they were just really decent people. They were a lot of fun to hang out with. They had some really great seminars. And I just got to spend time with them and their people. And, like, sometimes you just kind of know the people that make you happy and then you like to spend time with. And Hillary and Brian are just two of the people that really make me happy, 100%. Sonia Cillian would be on that list with and her husband, Gary, both stellar people. And they have, been a big impact on my process of going through and becoming a black belt and then an instructor. Jeff up at Isla, you had him on.
Yep.
Genuinely sweet human being. Love it when I get a chance to spend time with him, say hi to him. And there's a ton more. If I tried to list them, I'm guaranteed going to forget somebody. And I don't want anybody to get angry at me. But I've been really lucky that a lot of people have taken the time out to give me their time and make my progress, my process, my experience in this better because of it.
Yeah, that's reflective of my experience with jiu-jitsu, too, specifically jiu-jitsu in the Pacific Northwest. I think we have a really great community of people out here. The Rev, it's a tournament where we, ostensibly all get together to fight each other, but it always feels like a
it's like a class reunion. Yeah, it's like a class reunion.
Right. Everybody's so happy and just overjoyed to see each other. It's like the friendliest place in the entire world. I don't know if I've ever felt more welcomed at a place than at a jiu-jitsu tournament. And part of that's a testament to Jeff Bourgeois, how he runs Gina. But
all compliments go to Gina.
Yeah.
It's 100% because of Gina. Jeff helps too.
That's right. Well, and I also think that, as a secondary part of that conversation, looking at gym culture, because that's not a universally positive thing. I think there's a lot of great schools out there, but gym culture, this is a school owner, it's not something that happens by accident. You definitely have to work towards it.
Sometimes it does. Mm-hmm. And not that I disagree with you. I think that sometimes people just don't think about it or don't think about all of it. There are aspects that they take as given because that's how it was when their instructor did things.
Right, sure.
I think that because I've had so many opportunities to see so many different schools, traveling, doing seminars, spending time at my friends' schools while they were developing those schools, building those schools, teaching, I got to see a lot of different ways of doing things. And so I didn't really take for granted the culture aspect of building an academy. I think that if you're doing it right, you are being your authentic self. And so your place reflects you. And in our case, I'm the head instructor, but I am the co-owner, and my wife is also an owner, and she's also an instructor. And she also does an amazing job on leading the women's group that's here and has been growing and just doing amazing stuff. She is also one of the people who, when somebody walks in the door for the first time, her or some of the other people who have been part of our academy for a while are the people who walk over when I can't. And, I was talking with one of my students actually today, and she made a really good observation that she's like, I'm one of the people who goes over, and, so-and-so will go over. Well, actually, everybody pretty much will go over. And that was one of those things that really gets to your point on culture. I don't know that I specifically was like, I need to find people who will say hi and be friendly and welcoming. But I definitely created a culture that attracted people that would want to welcome others in. And And that, I think, is intentional. We're very family focused. We have a really great kids program, and kids being part of the program, and especially kids who don't necessarily find their home in sports or other activities, having this as an opportunity to develop a sense of self and a sense of like, I can actually do things. Like if I spend time, I can get good at something. I think that's been one of the original driving forces of this. We were actually asked to bring a program down here to Elma, and I said yes. Anybody else thinking about doing that? Talk to all the people you know first, and then decide to say yes. So that was an interesting choice, but it's worked out well. And what we were asked to bring was something to deal with the perception that there is a bullying problem in schools and just in general for kids. And also that there is a need for women's self-defense. What we actually found is that it was a more complex conversation than that. But that also really was a real driving factor on how we structured our academy. And it's why, I think a big reason why, where the normative average in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies, martial arts academies like ours, if you have 20% of your student base being women, that's like pretty good. You're doing a good job. You've generated a space, that is welcoming to everybody, including the people that, when I started, and not so welcome, especially for women or anybody who was a little bit different. Not so much. We are around 40%. And we have, from pretty much the beginning, as long as I've looked at the statistics on the back end and the software, I don't think I've ever seen it drop below 38%, maybe 37.5. But, and I think that was also a big part of my wife Sheila and I being really focused on it being a family place, because there are times when we didn't have that. And her being my best friend, and I like jiu-jitsu, I love doing this, but I really love doing it when she's here. Same with my kids being on the mat. I really wanted a place where any kid and my kids could all feel like this is a really great place to take a class. It's a great place to learn. I have a lot of fun here. Because having my kids nearby and part of the process and all that also makes me really happy. And I mean, and to a certain extent, it's a little bit selfish. But also, I think it's also about being authentic and honest. I really do know what I like, what matters to me, what I care about, what I stand for, like who I am, and what sort of decisions I'll make. And so I really, once I figured that out, and some of this I figured out earlier than others, I really stuck to, I'm going to work towards making the place that I want to be, that I want to teach at every day. I want to walk into the place that is the right place for me and the right place that represents me, rather than just create a place, to create the place. I think that maybe some people find a way to do that, but I think that if it's not your place, it's probably a rough time. And I have a lot of empathy for people who continue in that space.
Sure. No, I would echo a lot of those same sentiments. I think it's particularly for the non-athlete population, adult or kid, jiu-jitsu is very empowering, because you might not be an all-star quarterback or even be able to get on the football team, but you can do jiu-jitsu. Like, it's you can adapt the sport and the art to just about any body type or physicality or anything. So it is empowering that way. And yeah, I also agree that typically academies are reflective of the instructor. Hopefully that is a good vibe, and you want that to be, like you said, you want it to be authentic, and you want it to reflect who you are as a person. If you're right,
it's better if it's intentional.
Yeah,
I think it's better for the instructor. It's better for the students. I think everybody benefits from it being authentic, but also understood. Explicit rather than implicit.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, you're definitely living the dream, having your whole family train here. How has that changed your training, if it has at all? Just having your kids and your wife around, and does that?
I mean, step one, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
From the beginning, in the beginning, I didn't know that's what I was looking for, and that was part of something that I learned, especially when we were going through some rough times beginning of 2020. There was a lot of separation, and I realized the thing that really kept me going through it, and something that my wife did very intentionally, was, I don't know that I would have walked away from jiu-jitsu, but I had taken an extended break because I just wasn't in a great headspace. I was away from all my friends. I couldn't hang out with you guys.
Yeah.
And she intentionally made it a goal that she was going to make sure we trained consistently. And so we did. And she wasn't training at the time. She had sort of walked away from it. And so it wasn't easy for her to do. But luckily, right before this all happened, she had run across Sonia. And Sonia did the Sonia thing where she gets you on the mat, and next thing you know, you're wearing the gi and taking class. And so she had that nudge, and I bought her some gis for Christmas. And it worked out really well. And we trained as a family, ended up helping teach some remote classes for James when one of the other instructors couldn't do it because of schedule. And that was when I realized that I like this. I like being here with my family. And after things, were so separated, when people started coming back together in larger groups and going back to the normal, quote unquote, normal way that life goes, I realized I wasn't willing to do it without my family. And that's when I think really it's changed kind of what training was for me. Also, bottom line, I didn't plan on doing this, but it doesn't feel like work. It is hard work. It is tiring and exhausting and stressful and worrying, and you really have to want to do this. Sonia, other people who've talked about opening academies, you say a lot of times, just don't. They're not wrong. It's a hard thing to do, but I have to be told to take time off. I have to be told to take vacations because this doesn't feel like work. And the more that all of the really great students who are here and the people who've been here for, going on 2 years now, some of my oldest students who are like flourishing into these like really great upper belts, and, like having my family and kids, around on the mat, helping teach my class, my son saying, hey dad, I'll see you after school. And like, I'll run warm-ups for you, phone on. He's 10. And like, there's just something really great about that. I think that if you have the reason, if you were really in the headspace, you have a purpose for it, like definitely do it. It is the best thing ever. I have a dream job. I work with kids, I work with families. People tell me the things that are really challenging to them. They open up about things that they probably don't open up with almost anybody else about, maybe never. And I get to see people become better versions of themselves. And it's the coolest, best job ever. But it's also gonna be the hardest job like you ever. I'm sure there's probably harder jobs, but I've worked harder than in these last 2 years than I ever did in training. Getting good at jiu-jitsu is one thing. Running an academy, it stops being about you, and you have to choose when you get training. You have to choose how you get training. You have to prioritize other people and other things. It's definitely a different way to do jiu-jitsu, but I mean, if you find a way that fits for you, like I have found a way that fits for me, I'll tell you it's the best thing out.
Yeah, well, I think people don't realize, if they run an academy, how much goes into the back end. Like all the logistics stuff. So making sure you have all the right supplies, all the mat cleaner, that your mats are good repair, that you have, your licensure and insurance and all that paid and up to date, and like keeping track of all of that. In addition to like, looking at class times and restructuring, making sure you're meeting the needs of your students, and then making sure you're teaching the technique. And then, like you already alluded to, making sure your own training doesn't completely fall by the wayside. It can be a challenge to stay up on your own jiu-jitsu. How do you do that, or what have you found beneficial that way?
So, in the beginning, one of the cheats that I used is that I would still actually go up and spend time with James.
Yep.
I go up and grab time with Sonia. I drop in down at Unicorn because of the initial class schedule being so small. Because originally it wasn't actually going to be a full academy. It's just going to be a little club. I was going to bring program once or twice a week and be down here for a couple, hours. And then we found the place that we wanted to live. The kids and my wife and I, we all moved down here and became part of the community and started meeting all these like really amazing supportive people who helped this thing grow and flourish like it has. And I think that Shoot, I forgot what the question was.
Oh, just how you keep your own training?
Oh, yes. So in it growing into this thing, in the beginning, I made sure to touch base with other people and to keep that training. I think also that, like James has talked about and other instructors I know that have talked about, you don't need to have black belts around you to keep working to get better. You just have to be in the right headspace to keep being willing to learn, and maybe don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Sure.
People are going to really treat you like you know everything. And the thing is, you have to remind yourself at least, but also being honest with other people. I know an answer. Maybe I know a few answers. I can do good impressions of some people with great answers, but I don't know everything. And I am still in the process of learning. This belt isn't the end, it's the beginning. And I don't know what that means for everybody else, but I know that that's what it means to me in my own way. And I've heard others say the same thing. So I think that, making sure that you take care of your own training, find your own ways to keep connections with your previous training partners, inviting people down.
Yeah.
Being really open. I mean, one of the things that we did is that I also spent a lot of time on the mat of Lindsay Arcade down in Aberdeen, like 20 minutes away. Super welcoming, just wonderful guy, wonderful team of people. It was like a really great way to also anchor. And I didn't know him beforehand. And getting a chance to like train with somebody new, like he's an amazing guy and learns, and he does things that are really awesome. And still to this day, James is still not really sure how to deal with that lasso guard. But I think that being willing to meet new people, engage with new, grow your circle, I think that helps. I think it probably, if people are really insular and don't really share space and grow, it's probably a rough time.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah, I try to encourage. I think this is something, just my personal opinion, that all instructors should encourage their students to go out, hit as many gyms as they can, get as many different looks, and see as many different styles of jiu-jitsu, because that's really how you grow. If you only stay at your school, you can get better relative to the people around you, but it's good to challenge yourself, and it's humbling to go and see stuff you haven't seen before, and be submitted by it actively in real time. Like it definitely, but it keeps you kind of questioning what you're doing always and reconfiguring. So I think that cross-training element is an important one. It kind of goes against the old school mentality.
Does it?
Yeah.
But I think you're correct. I think that there's something very important in, just like you're not the first person in the line in jiu-jitsu and you're not the last person in line, you're just in the middle on your path. And that's true when it comes to running an academy, being a head instructor. You're not the first person to do it. You're not going to be the last person to do it. And you might not even be the first person at that academy. Maybe you take over from somebody else. You're not going to be the last, because ideally you're building something that will outlast you. That's certainly the thing that matters to me. One of the things that matters a lot to me is I really like the idea of something of me persisting and handing off. I mean, if I can help people develop into this and then maybe have an easier time of it opening an academy than I did, and not have to work quite so hard, and kind of have some of the like ready to go answers, like that'd be amazing. Yeah. So I think that, just like there are people who are better at jiu-jitsu or parts of jiu-jitsu, there are better people who are better at running an academy or doing certain things with academies. And it's just, you might as well learn from them, just like you learn everything else.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So speaking of leaving a legacy or having this lasting impact, you have a very particular nickname, and sort of in association with that, you have a system that you've developed that's kind of your thing. That you have this. I'll let you expound on the what of it, but to me, to kind of frame this up for everybody, one of the coolest things about jiu-jitsu is that you can be creative with it. Like, you can develop stuff, and even if you don't necessarily come up with it completely on your own. I know you've worked collaboratively on this particular system with Cindy Hales, with Rafa Sanchez, in developing it. It's still a creative outlet in a way that like a lot of traditional martial arts are very rigid. There's like these 60 techniques and that's what you're going to learn and that's it.
Orthodoxy.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so let us know your nickname, the history of that, and then the technique you developed, or the system you developed.
Yeah, so with James and I developing that friendship and mentor-mentee relationship, it had a knock-on effect that I would often ask him, hey, is this seminar a good seminar to go check out? And we'd run into each other at seminars before, like Salo Verbera seminars, like clockwork, we'd always see each other. But there's other ones, and some of them started to be across the country. Sometimes I'd hear about him because he'd mention it or say something or put something online. And so, by the weirdest math coincidence ever, I would just always walk in the door after him. He would walk in, I would walk in. People would say, hey, James. And then they say, hey, is that your student? And he'd be like, no. And I introduced myself, and at that time, I was training with Will Haggerty. I think that it happened enough that at a certain point, he just started to say, no, that's my stalker. And then it became that, no, he's my seminar stalker. And he'd often do that right before he pulled me out in front of everybody and had me demonstrate like everything or the things that he and I had been working on. Because we'd touch base and talk about things. Escaping side control, something like that. And at a certain point, he said it in front of other people and it just stuck. And so it's been shortened to stalker, which really isn't better. So in the community, I'm known for the notebook and I'm known for the nickname, and now known for this thing that people call mine. I really resisted calling it mine, but I spent a lot of years going around to these seminars and asking people, have you seen this? What do you think? And people will give me really great ideas. They'd add little details. And I got to the deep end of the pool with Emily Kwok and Hanato Tavares. And finally, at that point, it was a Black Belts for Butterfly seminar over on the East Coast. And I was asking them, and they're like, no, I haven't seen it. I'm like, well, maybe there's going to be somebody who will finally tell me. But until then, I walked over to James, and I'm like, okay, fine, it's mine. It was one of those things where it came about because people were really great at just doing Nishio. We had some really great people, and it was when Nishio was starting to really evolve into this very strong, robust system of not just your knee in one place. It could be in a couple different places. You could do different things with it. And we also had a decent number of tall people, and I am not. I am the opposite of tall. And so I would end up down on the calf. And I also would be around all these really great instructors and at these seminars. And I was getting a bunch of weird things thrown into my brain. Well, not weird, but different. And sometimes one weekend would be one instructor, one weekend would be another. In between, maybe James and I would talk about it, or I'd work on it with you or one of the other instructors at the academy, and we'd play around with it. And so I developed this little bundle of something. And it was, for whatever reason, something that got attached to when people put me down below a Nishio. I just started doing a leg weave. I started doing something that is you can see the lineage in Cindy Hale's Bora Bora. Mm-hmm. Orlando Sanchez, sweet human. He showed me something, I want to say it was something very inappropriately named, but it had to do with being in that sort of squatting position and rotating your knees, and so functionally leg weaving. And there's other people who had taught me little things over the years. And so I started using this as a way of creating a situation where people would do something very smart. They would rotate their knee because there was some tension on it, and so to protect it, they would rotate. And I later found out that a really good way of describing it is I was creating a reaction rather than a response. That one totally is on Emily Kwok. She was the one who nailed that one on the head. And so people did the smart thing. It was a good reaction. They're protecting their knee. And then they lose. Because now I'm past the hip line. I can see the IT band on even the slightest of angle. If I drop forward, I'm past your kneecap. I'm next to your IT band. At that point, structurally speaking, I'm past your guard. Now I have to figure it the rest of the way out. I have to secure it. I have to finish. But even at the beginning, I would get past and up to people's hips. And I also work very low, thanks to our friend Ryan Montero, who is very well known for catching everybody with that Ezekiel choke from everywhere. So I work low because it has minimized the chance of getting caught with chokes. And it's just, it was really cool to work with a lot of different people and have them just say, oh, add this, maybe do this. Like High Stalker is purely a collaboration with two really great black belts, Molly and Becca, friends of ours, who we tried to figure out a way of doing this, teaching this, where even a brand new white belt could do it without having to worry about them like accidentally turning the wrong knee and hurting the knee. And if I just done it myself, I don't know, like it took me a while to even understand I was doing something over and over. But without a lot of people giving a lot of good feedback and wrecking me when I tried to run it, I think that I wouldn't have developed something that really was worth giving a name. I think it was my dogged like determination to just keep sticking to it, and my willingness to let people tear it apart and help me rebuild it and keep working on it. That really was the thing that created it. And I would suggest to people like that's a thing that anybody can do. It's not like I'm special. I've talked to some people who always did the key lock with their arm under the head, and their instructor would be like, that's the wrong way to do it. And now they teach seminars where they show people how to do a key lock with the arm underneath the head, because it turns out when you know why it works, it works. It's just, I think that the takeaway, aside from like, hey, here's a cool way to deal with a knee shield, which is a really good idea, is to go ahead and definitely allow people to have input, to open the things that you have to others rather than trying to just tightly control them.
Sure. Well, yeah, definitely against the old school way of thinking, but that
opposite of the old school way.
But a much better way to go about things, in my opinion. I would agree with you. Well, then, and you mentioned like making techniques more accessible to people who are newer to training and re-engineering them for such a purpose. And I think that's a great thing. And again, jiu-jitsu kind of allows for that creativity. And that's a good segue into a question that I like to ask everybody who comes onto the channel. For those people who are just starting jiu-jitsu, or maybe they haven't even started yet, but they're really interested in it, that's a very vulnerable time. We talked about, there's a high attrition rate for people just starting jiu-jitsu, but I guess at all levels of jiu-jitsu, but certainly when you're first starting. What would be the advice you'd impart to somebody who is just coming on and you're looking to help them be successful? What things would you tell them?
I mean, step one, assume that you can do it. I see a lot of people self-select themselves out, and they just won't give it a try. They keep pushing it. They keep pulling away. They keep saying, no, I couldn't be the person who does that. And the bottom line is, you can. Almost everybody can, especially if you're at the right place. Definitely look, are there people who look like you age-wise, fitness-wise at this place? If the match isn't there, maybe that might not be the place for you. But there are lots of places, like James makes a very concerted effort to make it accessible to people. I really make it a thing that's a core part of our academy to make it accessible to everybody, partly because I just like everybody to be able to do things, and I like sharing things, and I want everybody to be able to do the cool thing, fun thing that I do, because it's cool and fun and everybody should do it. But also because, working with people who maybe have challenges, youth that are dealing with, or managing, engaging with life while being on the spectrum or something like that, as well as working with veterans. I think that it's really important that you make the space for the people, and it's really important that people, once they say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and train here, it looks like me, the vibe is right. Ideally, somebody came off the mat and said, like, hey, how are you doing? And had a conversation with you and asked you, like, why did you walk in the door? What are you looking to gain from this? Like, how can I be helpful to you, basically? I think it's that you then need to make sure you trust.
Yeah.
I know lots of instructors who say like, if only I had known, because somebody doesn't feel like they can talk to you. It's sometimes purely because they think they're wasting your time. And I would say like, please talk to us. It's literally why I'm here. Tell me the thing that's going on. Tell me the thing that's going to break your training habit, that's going to cause problems. Because like my core goal is to make sure that if you want to learn jiu-jitsu, you get to learn jiu-jitsu. And I can't do that. At least I'm not going to be as effective in that if I don't know that there's something going on. And so I think that the clear communication is huge.
Sure.
I would say that once you step on that mat, then it's just clear communication. Also, the last one, and I think this is more prevalent now than it used to be, you can just choose not to work with anybody. It's, your belt isn't your instructor's, your path doesn't belong to anybody else. You don't have to train at an academy that you started at, and you don't have to roll, spar, drill with anybody you don't want to. And you don't have to explain why.
Okay.
But you still do need to talk to the instructor and let them know. And here's the thing. If the instructor has a hard time with that, maybe that's not the place for you. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying it might not be. And that's not a dig at an instructor. That's just acknowledging that there's a problem. And that instructor might not be the person to address it and facilitate a fix. And other instructors will. Because I know a lot of instructors, like you, who will figure out, like, how do we make this good? Whether it's partnering them up with somebody who's the same gender, or somebody who's the same age, or let a person work off to the side during certain segments.
Sure.
There are ways to make things happen. And I think that some instructors prioritize that more than others. And again, it's a way of doing things. It's the way I do things. I'm not saying it's the only way to do things.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think the best schools, though, or the best instructors that I've worked with are tailoring the training to the student. I mean, we do, I think, largely speaking, people who enter into jiu-jitsu or martial arts want to be pushed to some degree. We don't want it to be easy. We don't want to walk in and on our third day get a black belt and be told, that's it, you've achieved it. We want some sort of level of challenge. On the other hand, while the ostensive reason for coming in to train jiu-jitsu is we're learning how to defend ourselves or how to fight or how to compete. There's this sort of sporting aspect. Not everybody necessarily wants to be an international no-gi competitor that's going to win ADCC. A lot of people, and that's not everybody has to do that. Some people just want to come in for reasons of confidence, or they just want that challenge on a personal level, or they just want to get in shape. Whatever the rationale or the impetus is for coming in to train, an instructor recognizing that, okay, this person has these limitations or this particular goal set, and I'm going to let them go on their own particular journey. I think it's a very valuable, that's a hard thing to do sometimes as an instructor, right? We all get into our own groove and our own mindset, but realizing there's something bigger than just being good at sport jiu-jitsu that the art can offer.
Well, I think part of it is something that comes from an intentional place of trying to help, is that we want to apply our answer to other people. And that just people aren't like that. I have 2 amazing upper belts. I have more than 2 amazing upper belts, but I have 2 amazing upper belts. Both of them are amazing. Both of them are people that everybody says that's going to be a challenging role. They're not mean. They're not like beating anybody up, but you will work because they are very technical and they are hardworking and they train regularly. And so they're also putting in the hours. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't necessarily pick up on, is like other people might be training 5 times a week. You're training 1 or 2 times a week. That is a different path. Do not measure yourself. That's the way that sadness shows up. But I think that I forgot the question again.
Or just maybe a better way for me to frame it would be like, there are intangibles kind of that jiu-jitsu or the art of jiu-jitsu offers. Just the physical nature.
Yeah, so one of those students, that's where I was going. One of those students is ADHD. It's a fun thing to have. Mm-hmm. So one of them is, both of them have competed. One of them is very, very, very comfortable in competition and has only ever won because they come into it with a great mentality. They work really hard. They prep. They do the work, and then their preparation meets that opportunity. Like just really awesome. And honestly, this person is also just great in the academy. Great at helping with teaching or coaching. Really great working with new students. Just generally, like, this is a great person. The other upper belt, basically the same, except didn't win their finals match. And I didn't catch it in time. Also, didn't have a positive experience in competition beginning at the first match. And because I was focused on coaching towards the win, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that the person was not having a good time. This wasn't a positive. And I have a rule. You don't have to go through trauma to get progress, to gain something, to grow in this. I'm not a fan of the starving artist or the people have to go through suffering to have the really awesome thing. I actually later on just said, like, look, I didn't catch that, and I'm sorry. Like, my job as a coach is to keep you safe, be a good mentor, teach you how to do these things. But most importantly, it's my job to make sure that you're okay. And I didn't. And that was like a really important learning experience for me. And both of them are really great. One of them really doesn't want to do competition, even though I think they would be amazing at, and they are so technical and awesome. Both of them are. There's a lot of similarities, but one of them enjoys it, and it's a positive. And one of them, at least for right now, doesn't enjoy it. And I have to be the coach that they both need without overriding it with like the thing that like makes sense to me, sure, or that I want, or that makes the school look better, or whatever else. Yeah. Like, I think that's like it's hard, even when you're not being selfish or mean or any of the negatives, you can, in a positive, thoughtful, kind way, just mistakenly really just put your foot in it, and it can have real consequences with students. And as people don't need help quitting, they need help staying in this process. And so anything you can do to really be the best version of the coach that they need, I think is just a huge thing. It's a huge thing that I learned, and I think it's one of the hardest and best skills to get.
We do get those light bulb moments for sure. Yeah, it is humbling. And you're right. Sometimes it's obvious if somebody's just pushing somebody beyond their limits, and it's just a negative, like, overtly. But sometimes we could feel like we have their best interest at heart, and we're pushing them, and then where they go. And no, that wasn't the thing to do.
Well, and then you do the replay in your head, and you're like, oh, that look on the face was there for the last match. And that look in the face wasn't like, what do I do? Coach me through this technique. It's, this is not, doesn't feel good. This is not okay. This is something that was just like, hey, today, not the day. And here's the thing. Nobody needs to justify it or give their reasons. Right. It's just, as long as they're willing to talk about it and be open and clear with communication, it's my responsibility to listen and to pay attention. And sometimes people are going to tell you their problems. Sometimes you're going to have to pay attention to people's faces. You're going to have to listen to their voice. You're going to have to watch them walk in and walk out of the academy to catch the things that maybe they don't even really know themselves. Because part of being a really great instructor, some of the best things I like about really great instructors that I know, yourself included, is that you pay attention to the person, not just the martial artist.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that is an important one. And ultimately, that kind of goes to what you said earlier. I would agree with that. The people don't need help quitting. They need help sticking with it sometimes. And to me, the true benefit of this art is, I mean, the physical part of it is awesome. But it gives you these other things that, whether in helping you deal with the challenges that life throws at you. Now, maybe that challenge is a self-defense altercation outside of the academy. I hope nobody goes through that, but if that's where jiu-jitsu ends up helping somebody, it could certainly be useful for that. But I think it could also be really useful and probably more accessible to people in like dealing just with that difficult coworker, not in terms of choking them, but just in terms of centering yourself.
And it's just not bothering you that
Right. Dealing with to exist and kind of marinate in those difficult positions. If you can suffer under James Foster's side control, the rest of it just doesn't seem that bad when you're dealing with that difficult coworker. But whatever it is, whether it's bills or difficult people or what have you, the real benefit to me is if a person keeps training jiu-jitsu for long enough, it helps them in those capacities.
I think it goes back to what Emily Kwok said when we were talking, that it's about, are you reacting or are you responding? And I think one of the biggest benefits to Brazilian jiu-jitsu that I've found is that it allows me to be present in situations where I wouldn't really be present. I would just be reactive.
Mm.
And maybe it would go well, but maybe not. And I have to say, at least personally, I find this way of going through life a lot more relaxing, a lot more fun, and a lot more enjoyable than when before I trained. I would get booped really easily. Somebody would poke a button and I would just get really irritated, really grumpy, really frustrated. It's tiring to live like that. I just think that, at least for me, this is like a better way of being. And I think seeing it happen with a lot of different people, it doesn't fix your life. It just makes you better at addressing and approaching the challenges that you have. And maybe making them grind less from you, to take less from you. It makes you handle better. It also teaches you that you should probably ask for help and you should talk to people about your problems. I'm not very good at this technique. Also, I don't know how to deal with this relationship problem or, this problem at work or whatever it is. People learn how to ask questions, and questions are things you should be asking all the time, not just on the mat.
Right. It takes a certain degree of humility to do that. Well, to segue a little bit then to a different but related topic, I know you had encountered your own life challenge almost a year ago now. And I'll leave it to you to tell the story, but I'd be interested in terms of weaving that into how that may have affected your outlook on life, but on jiu-jitsu and how things have gone with that.
Yeah. So most of the people who know me know that I went through a cardiac event last year. In February, I had something called a STEMI, or it's more commonly known as a widowmaker, because the survival rate is 9 to 11%-ish. And that's even for people who are in the hospital. So it's just one of those coin flip. And I got the coin flip. And so in my situation, I was up visiting the James's Academy. I was grabbing some rolls with some of the other instructors and friends of mine, checking with Michelle Wagner when she was about to set off on her grand journey. She gave me a Fukai belt. That meant the world to me. And then partway through the rolls, and not even heavy rolls, just light rolls, I just started having problems. But I kept rolling. And I rolled probably 2.5 rounds until before I was just I'm cooked. And there's a lot of pain. It felt like somebody had flexed my ribs. But we've all had that discomfort. At least once you've had that, my ribs got really shoved. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, obviously that wasn't the problem. But instead of going, hey, I should probably go to the medical center 2 blocks away, I talked to James, we caught up. I talked with Amy, his wife, and we hadn't seen each other, so we talked for a while. Caught up with my friend Leo, who was getting ready to open Matrix, and just talked about the stuff that I learned, and I just was super enthusiastic to see him open a school, and that school is awesome, and he's just an amazing person, so that part is really cool. But again, I probably should have gone 2 blocks down and then had that conversation another day. And then I told James, hey, I'm not feeling so great. And he's like, yeah, you don't look like you're feeling so great. And then I drove home, and I didn't drive to the 2 block away medical center. I was driving towards down here in Elma, which was 1.5 hours away. And it ended up being a situation where I was most of the way home, and I started feeling tracing from my shoulder to my elbow, that I was this is a thing. And I diverted to the hospital. I walked in, I changed my belt because I really didn't want that belt to get cut if for some reason something happened. Went in, said, hey, I think I'm having a cardiac event. Had a little fun time when somebody else came in with a much more serious problem. Well, at least I thought so, but I was wrong. I should have said, hey, I also I am in just as much of a dire need. But I was like, no, take care of that first, because I was being a terrible patient, like I'd been for years, because this is something that had been slowly creeping up on me for 3, 5, 7 years. And eventually, after like some of the tests, the blood work came back, and then they're like, oh, you're going to the very sick person room. And that's when it really kicked off. Ended up in the cath lab. They ended up kicking loose the left side of my heart, which had basically been running dark for about 3.5 hours, maybe longer. And I got lucky. The right side of my heart is just done differently. It's got a big feeder pipe. It's just vascularized in a way that I was able to be functional. Jiu-jitsu helped. It helped with me being able to handle the difficulty, the pain, to stay present. It really wasn't, so far as we can tell, that traumatizing an experience for me. I am still waiting for the other shoe to drop, because rarely do you get to go through something like that and for there not to be a follow-on. But in general, it wasn't that big a hit to me. I was managing it. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu definitely did that. The problem is it was doing that for years. And instead of asking questions of like, hey, this seems like it's getting worse, I just adapted. I just adjusted. I just managed it. Whatever. Hard side control. Can't recover from like cardio. Like I just treated it as like just another challenge, just another thing to figure out how to do a technique or efficiency. And so for me, it was a positive until I realized, especially about a day later, day and a half, I started figuring it out. I started worrying about it right out of the gate, but it really hit me about a day and a half later when all of a sudden I started really doing the math and realizing I scared a lot of people, that there had been people waiting for 3 hours while I was in surgery, and they didn't know if it was going to go well. And with that type of heart attack, it usually doesn't. So while I was fine and talking to the nurse about her brother that does jiu-jitsu and at an academy that's owned by a friend of mine, and having a just fine time because I was there and present and aware, and also in my kind of trauma brain and just managing. I don't know how many people worried about me, not too far away. And then I had a bunch of other people find out, and all of those people, like you, I apologize to you too, because it's something that I could have found an off-ramp for much sooner. I could have found a way to do it, and it wasn't anybody else's job to figure it out. In fact, my symptoms were really well hidden, because it turns out endurance athletes are terrible patients. Yeah. One of my cardiac docs, he literally was out running, STEMI hit, he ran the rest of the way to the hospital. We are terrible patients. We are very, very dumb. And so we have to understand that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is great, and some of the things that we learn and are able to do because of this martial art are great. But also, sometimes it can make us really, 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 really set for a very bad failure, that we don't take care of ourselves, that we don't go talk to a doctor, that we don't ask questions. And instead we're just like, I can handle it. I can deal.
Yeah.
And I think it's whether it's the hard thing like what happened with me, whether it's something to do with like relationships or substance or mental health or whatever. I think that it's important for people who are doing this to not just get better at dealing and being okay, but also to learn how to not be okay, accept that they're not okay, ask for help, ask the questions, so that it becomes hey, looks like you're having like some cardiac stuff going on, let's go ahead and start some medication, rather than you're in surgery for 3 hours, and then the next day you're in surgery, and then the next day you're in surgery, and 3 stents and 1 like impeller in your heart for 24 hours later, you're finally out of the woods, and people don't have to freak out and be terrified anymore. And you've scared all of your friends and family. Like, my wife is my best friend, like I said. that means I also scared the living crap out of my best friends. And that's just like a jerk thing to do. So like, as much as I love this art and having walked this path, there's a donut hole where you can fall into. And I would offer that maybe don't try and do what I did. It wasn't cool. It was dumb. And I try and make sure everybody understands. It's not cool. It's dumb. I got lucky. Coin flip. And you don't want to plan on a coin flip.
True.
Yeah, especially not that coin flip.
Well, we are all glad you are still here, my friend.
I appreciate that.
How do you feel like it, at this point with that perspective, has it changed your training or your training habits at all? Like, is anything different that way?
100%. On the table, I even told the doctor, the surgeon was working on me, he asked me how I was feeling. I'm like, this is the best I've felt in years. Keep going. And it's been like that since. I have felt better and more able to engage with actually what jiu-jitsu is, because now I'm actually functional. Before, I couldn't really engage with part of it. It's like being like not very flexible and not be able to do something, except I couldn't do really anything past a certain point. And so now I feel like I get to train and I get to really go into anything. And I know that I'll be okay because now I'm working with the functional shirt. Because it was such a long time in the heart attack, I took some damage to my heart. It would have been smarter and better, again, if I'd just gone to the hospital. It would have been even smarter if I had. But now that I had gone through the rehab process, which say yes to the rehab, I was getting into like good shape. I had good cardio. I understood my limits. I had good guidance. And so I was able to really engage with this martial art again, and in a better way. It was just, if anything, it was one of those kind of like hidden blessings that, I wouldn't recommend, and I would not suggest the path, but getting to the place where you really are fully engaged with it, I think that's a really great opportunity. And I think the other part is, it really made me reevaluate what other things am I taking for granted? What other things am I assuming about my jiu-jitsu, about my teaching, about how I'm doing things? And I think that also, that realization that I need to be introspective and double check, I think was really important, which is why when they also asked, do you want to talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist? I just said yes. In fact, I basically just been saying sure to basically everything after that, because I started realizing that I also would say no to certain things. And I still, because of, years ago, getting to be in a room with Alan Shabaro, who was one of the founders for We Defy, an organization I worked for, even though I'd been in the room and he talked about some really, really heavy stuff about his process and experience. And so I knew these things were things you could talk about, and I would even talk about them. I still really wasn't taking all the resources that were available and like making use of them. And so instead I did. I started figuring out what was going on in my head. And we already knew that I had PTSD, but it turns out there was other stuff going on. And everybody's known that I have ADHD. And so also, went to work on seeing so what is the version of me that can be the best version of me, so I can be the best, father, husband, instructor, and just the happiest version of me. And it was really good for me to just stop saying no, stop arguing, stop doing and managing, but actually be like, okay, so like, if that's broken, what else is broken? That was the incorrect choice. What other incorrect choices am I making? And not make assumptions, not just take it as given, and just be willing to, look at everything with ideally fresh eyes, or better yet, ask other people if they have a thought. Because here's the thing, I have a feeling that a bunch of people could have told me some of these answers. And I know that, since then especially, there have been times when I've been the person who've given that answer to other people who've asked the question of like, hey, what about this? And it's like, well, obviously. But it wasn't obvious to them. And just like it wasn't obvious to me. But hopefully, having heard this, people will say, that's not feeling as great as it should. It's different than it was. I'm just going to ask the doctor about him. Or like, hey, like, maybe I should talk to somebody. Maybe there's some stuff going on in my head. Maybe I don't have to carry this. I don't have to feel this way. Maybe it would be great for other people also not to have to carry my stuff or deal with my stuff, because it's not just you, it's also everybody around you. And it'll make you a better practitioner of this martial art. It'll make you a better instructor. It's a good idea.
Sure.
Hard to say, hard to do.
Right.
But it's just a good idea. And, I would recommend maybe not waiting for a traumatic event where you scare all your friends to actually just go, maybe I should just take care of stuff.
You could, sure. You could do it a different way, but well, again, humility, right? It's like having the humbling yourself to the prospect of going and asking for help. It's a simple thing, but it's not easy. And you mentioned the We Defy Foundation.
Yes.
It's a great organization. I'd love to hear you kind of expound on that and what they do and your role with them. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I would really be happy to. I am not the best person to talk about this, but I will do my very best impression of TJ or Brooke. So We Defy is a nonprofit, so a 501c3. We work to support combat veterans who are coping with combat-related injuries, disabilities, challenges, whatever, to get a positive outcome by engaging with training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And we help them with connecting them with an academy that's been checked out and cleared, and that we can say, this is a person we trust to be an instructor. This is a place that is safe. These are people who will look after you and listen to you, or just give you the space you need to do what you are there to do. We will set them up with 2 gis, some other gear, and pay for their training for a year. So the goal is that nobody who needs to train, nobody who would benefit from this training has to wait or at the very least can't do it. Our resources are finite, 100%. If you want to support the mission, definitely go to wedefy.org, because wedefyfoundation.org, and put in some money, because it's $2,800 to fund an athlete for a year.
Sure.
Our organization is doing really well, and there's an amazing amount of people. We're at this point all over the world, but there's more vets, always more vets, more people who could benefit from being on the mat. My answer, and I know some other instructors' answer, is that the bottom line, if you are a person who would benefit from We Defy and are waiting for that process to get started and get going forward, I still make it happen so that somebody can keep training. I'm not saying that people should do that. I'm not saying that's the right or best way to do it, but it's definitely the way that I feel best about doing it. And over the years, since that conversation that Alan Shabar had with everybody in the room, which I found out later was the first time he'd ever talked about it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was. I didn't know that part. Because recently he had a summit, and I actually told him how much it meant, and I thanked him. I can't possibly ever do enough to make up for or to pay them back for what they were able to trigger with me, and going you can talk about this stuff, and also you should. It's grown from that conversation over the years to being this very robust organization that's in basically, I think, every state, a bunch of other countries. It has people going, out into the other parts of the world. We have a lot of athletes. If you see the We Defy logo or just the Shield logo, that's somebody who is either doing something brave, is helping somebody else do something brave. And no matter what, I think it's worth asking how you could be helpful. At this point, I also am logistics for the region, an ambassador and a training facility instructor, which, to be given the opportunity to be trusted with people coming in from that program is one of the most important things that I've been given. I would say that it's next to getting a black belt for me. Like, that is something that really tells me that by my own metric, like I've been doing the thing that is the right thing to do, or at least the correct thing for me to do. And I take it very seriously, having veterans on the mat, having people, trusted, entrusted to me. It's no small thing. But it's also kind of another one of those best parts of the job, is I've gotten to at least try to give back to somebody who did a really big thing for me. So again, it's a lot of work running an academy, but sometimes it also lets you do some really awesome things.
Sure.
To say thank you, to support, some people who helped you out, in at a stage in your path when you needed it.
With that, no, that's an amazing thing. It's a great organization, and that's really cool that you're working with them, that you're furthering their goals. When speaking of amazing people and also doing amazing things for the community, Elena Stowell.
Oh yes, Elena, our favorite author, teacher, and brave journeyer to the favelas in Brazil. So I also do some work with Elena with her nonprofit, the Carly Stoll Foundation, which that's a story for her to tell. I definitely recommend, if you get the opportunity, picking up her book about it. Her path to jiu-jitsu was also a very interesting one and worth a discussion, I think. But she has been working on building community centers and youth enrichment development places for kids down in the favelas, and really trying to create a space down there and anchoring it with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then just, adding in some learning how to speak really and write really great Portuguese, but also English, which is a huge door opener for kids who are growing up in the favelas who don't get the opportunity for that. And just in general, clean water, safe place. When things kick off up in the favelas, they have a place that they can go and bunker down. I think that, I think that it's cool, the things that I've been able to do. I think that it's amazing, the things that she's been able to do in a place where, it's not a lot of resources. There aren't a lot of supports, and she's done it anyway. It's taken a lot of effort and time, but she's really done it. I think that Carly would be really proud of her.
No, I would agree. Well, I'll try to include a link to both of them, as the Carly Stoll Foundation and the We Defy Foundation. The link to this video as well. People should definitely check them out. Well, brother, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you, man. And check out Honeybear Jiu-Jitsu here in Elma, Washington. Come down and get some tough rolls in with some really, really good people. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.